Right on to the real, much love to these haters. It's time for the Lakers. It's time for the Lakers. Right on to the real, much love to these haters. It's time for the Lakers. It's time for the Lakers. Right on to the real, much love to these haters. It's time for the Lakers. It's time for the Lakers.
Man, what is happening, my YouTube family? Of course, it is your boy B New. I'm coming at you on this Thursday. And first and foremost, as always, want to send out positive vibrations and blessings to anybody who could be listening. Now, with all that being said, we all know that the Los Angeles Lakers were back in action last night, coming off their first win of the season against Denver. And they were back in action last night downtown Los Angeles at the Crypto.com arena to take on none other than the New Orleans Pelicans, who was actually still without Brandon Ingram. So you would think, well, this should be slight work for the Lakers, but as always, they made it interesting. And I say it's slight work because me, unlike a whole lot of other people, still have a whole lot of faith in the Los Angeles Lakers and what they can do and what they are capable of in this season, because you got a lot of good teams that's struggling early on. You know, you got a lot of surprise teams that's in the top of the West, like the Portland Trail Blazers, who actually right now are missing Damian Lillard, and they went down last night to the Memphis Grizzlies out there in Portland. You have teams like the San Antonio Spurs, who are doing really good. And, you know, these Spurs are just really surprising a whole lot of people. But not only that, you know, you have teams like the Clippers and Golden State who are struggling, you know, more towards the bottom of the rankings. And I keep telling people, well, the Lakers were only one game behind the Clippers and Golden State in the loss column. So everybody just calm down and not so fast, because the Lakers are only going to grow with team chemistry as the season progresses. But it is one thing that does have me worried, and I will talk about that in just a moment, and it does concern that of nobody else than LeBron James, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But you know, we got a lot to talk about, so I just want to get into the game. For those of you who didn't see it, I like to do a good breakdown of what transpired during the course of the game. And you know, one thing I saw was, and I don't know, but I keep saying this, I think Pat Bev is playing himself out of a starting lineup role, because that starting lineup with Pat Bev in it is not the best starting lineup, because, okay, you have LeBron, who is not shooting his best, and we'll talk about more about that in a minute, why I think that is the case, but who is not shooting his best as of right now. And then you have Lonnie Walker, who is actually shot 5 of 9 from 3 last night, so it's actually really on the uptick as far as the shooting, as far as getting open shots. If the Lakers continue to get him open looks like they've been doing, that'll be a good thing. But when you start the game and you have Pat Bev, then you're taken away. And then Troy Brown, of course, you know, he's capable, but he's still not just a great three-point shooter. AD, you know, he's not been shooting threes, which to me is a good thing. I don't think he needs to shoot threes in order for the Lakers to win, but I do think he can, you know, and should play more from the elbow and as well in the paint. You know, I would like to see him more down in the post, but playing at the elbow is good too, because he can still stretch the floor in a sense by taking 15 to 17-foot shots. If he is indeed making these shots, that's when it's dangerous, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute too. But you know, I think Pat Bev and that lineup, they started off slow, but then you insert Russell Westbrook, and now all of a sudden you have a playmaker. And Russ, you know, coming off the bench, is getting a lot of support from the crowd. He comes in, he hears the cheers, and I think he's ready to go to work. And he actually played pretty well last night, even though he didn't get a whole lot of minutes as he did before. And we'll talk about that later, because, you know, he really didn't get a chance in overtime, which we'll, you know, get into that in just a few moments too. But, you know, he played well down the stretch, even though Darvin Ham elected to go with Pat Bev at the end of the game, which I don't think was necessarily a bad decision because of the hustle plays that Pat Bev was making. Pat Bev was actually, you know, at the end of the game, made some key plays, you know, just playing great defense on C.J. McCullough and really limiting him to what his normally scoring outburst that he's fully capable of having. So with that being said, I think Pat Bev, especially LeBron missed the free throw, Pat Bev got the rebound. LeBron missed the free throw, they got a rebound. Pat Bev snuck from behind it and got the rebound and stole it and got the Lakers an extra possession. So, you know, he definitely came in clutch, I would say, at the end. Even though, you know, he was going to take a three, he thought twice about it. He had drove to the basket, made a floater. It just couldn't quite go in and rimmed out. AD couldn't even get the putback. He tried, he couldn't do it. So ultimately, you know, it led to New Orleans actually taking the lead. And we're going to talk more about that in just a moment. But what I'm saying is, you know, when Westbrook came in, that was a good lineup because he was going downhill. And what the Lakers have been doing with Westbrook, I noticed even with LeBron James in the game, they have been making him into a they've been making him into a roller, So, I mean, when he's screening, he's also rolling. But when he rolls, he's rolling from the high post. And when he rolls, he can still attack, or he can distribute to people that's in the corner on the strong and the weak side for open shots, because he's collapsing the defense. And if they don't, then he's going to be capable of still getting by his man and finishing at the rim. And we know him and LeBron James are two bully ball players that can definitely get to the hole as when they can. But speaking of LeBron James, I said I was going to get to this, and this is what I'm saying that concerns me about LeBron is, I don't know if a lot of you all know, but of course last night he was dealing with sickness. He had said he'd been in bed for 3 days and been sick, and you could just tell he didn't have the breath of what he usually has. But what's concerned me more is the bunnies he's missed around the rim, and him not shooting near 50% like he's normally doing, and I don't think it's a case of father time, but come to find out, LeBron has been having a lot of left foot soreness that's been having him listed as probable, of course, throughout the course of the season. But they said last night, whenever LeBron sat out the game, he would take his shoe off and start massaging that foot, just letting me know that, it's not a good thing. And then I know people personally who played in sports who've had stress fractures in their foot. Then that's how it started off. They would have soreness. They'd try to recuperate. It hurt like hell. Then it just keep going back and forth until eventually it leads to a stress fracture. And that is something we definitely do not want to see happen with LeBron James. So, but I just feels like he's giving it his all. He said he's playing through the pain just like AD is, because they started off slow and they need to win some games. But I would hope at some point that AD and Russ, I mean, they look good together. I think, could be a good punch for the Lakers, especially if they start going against some lower tier teams, if they can ever get in on their schedule. But to be quite honest, the NBA is so deep right now, you tell me what a lower tier team is, because even the OKCs of the world is battling. And that's what I'm trying to tell people. You want to say 90s this and 90s that. Listen, man, I grew up there, and, I know all about that. But what I'm trying to tell you, all the athleticism, even Isaiah Thomas said it recently, when it comes to these athletes, we see who can do what and how deep it is. Back in this day, okay, you only had Jordan, who was that athletic, compared to that of his adversaries and his teammates, aside from Scottie Pippen, who was very athletic and was very capable on the defensive end of the floor. But we won't talk about all that. But at the end of the day, a lot of these teams are just very athletic. So I think, Darvin Ham, the Lakers, they end up with Westbrook, LeBron, and AD in the lineup closing out that second quarter. They went up by 12 or 13. So, I thought he would come out with that, but of course, no, he wanted to go back to bringing Westbrook off the bench. Well, in this particular case, I think LeBron, Westbrook, and AD were playing pretty good. Who knows? Maybe they start to figure something out, and Westbrook might end up going back to that starting lineup if he's not going to make boneheaded plays and turn the ball over. Because if he can get downhill and distribute and be a screener off LeBron, and they can play some pick and roll with LeBron and AD and play some pick and roll with Westbrook and LeBron, then you can have some things going. But typically they've gone away from a lot of that pick and roll because Anthony Davis hasn't been a reliable shooter. So if somebody rolls with him and you have to do a pick and pop, then you see Anthony Davis being broke out there. But if he can get his shot to fall, which his shot has been looking better, then I think, the Lakers they'll be on to something. But I still feel like they can play with anybody in this league. And the thing about it is their defense is always going to keep them in games, because right now they're number one in the Western Conference in defense, points allowed, steals, and a number of categories in overall defense. So, I think the Lakers are definitely going to be there. And if they can keep hanging their head on the defensive end, then that's something that's going to really lead to success for them. But kind of going back to those lineups, when he came out in the third quarter, back with the Troy Brown lineup, it wasn't so good. And they kind of went on their run. And everybody, if you notice, in the starting lineup was a positive. Even Russ, coming off the bench, was a positive. But all the other bench players, not including Russ, were negatives. So, Darvin Ham has to find a way to get lineups. And I know at one point he was running the lineup when he gave Russ and AD a lot of break together because he was using them together, which I don't think was a bad idea. But in the meantime, he had LeBron. I want to say it was LeBron, Wayne and Gabriel, Matt Ryan, Austin Reeves, and maybe Lonnie Walker out there. And I mean, they started to go on a run before that because the Lakers was making a lot of unforced errors. And then once you went with that lineup and let them rest, that's when the Lakers went on. That's when New Orleans went on another run and, cut the lead down to like 3 or 4. And then you had LeBron just holding on to the lead and being a distributor with that particular lineup, which actually wasn't a bad lineup because they were spreading the floor and they had a lot of people that was capable of doing so. So I think that was a pretty good lineup. But at the end of the day, you know, he elected to bring in, after that, he brought back in AD, Russ, Austin Reeves, Lonnie Walker, and Brown. And once he did that, you know, I just feel like the momentum shifted just a little bit. But after the Lakers were able to settle down, it became a back and forth game. But then we got to the 3, you know, Russ was in and they was doing pretty good. But, you know, it got down to the 3-minute mark in a close game and he elected to pull Russ out. And like I was alluding to before, when he pulled Russ out is when they, you know, actually put in Pat Bev. And then Pat Bev started to put the clamps down on CJ McCullough. So I thought Darvin Ham electing at the end of the game, even though Russ was having a good game, to not go with him wasn't necessarily a bad decision because he wasn't necessarily spreading the floor at this point, you know. And I will say this, before the Matt Ryan 3 that ultimately saved the game, you know, I think the Lakers played a lot of bad basketball at the end of the game. And I'm going to lay a lot of that on the foot of LeBron James because they had maybe like 3 possessions in a row where LeBron James just ISO'd, didn't get AD involved. Nobody else got any touches. You pretty much held the ball the whole possession just to shoot a 3 or just to shoot a long shot. Just because you were up by 3 or up by 5. I mean, that's how you went from 5 to 3 to that, to giving up the lead, and it ultimately led to the run out by them and to go up by 3. And at this point, I'm really thinking that the game is over. And I'm not sure, because Lonnie Walker, on that play, they had a chance to hit the 3 and tie it up before the Matt Ryan 3. So I don't know if you all know that, but of course, they set up a nice play. Pat Bev had an open look, but he swung and made the extra pass. And speaking of extra passes, the Lakers were making extra passes all night, which was excellent because it was finding the extra pass was giving people a way extra few seconds, so to speak, to have an open look. And that was very good for the Lakers to get such open looks because shots started to fall, especially for Lonnie Walker. He was hitting shots at the top of the key and in the corner. But at the end of the day, you know, Pat Bev elected to swing that extra pass over to Lonnie Walker. He had a wide open, I mean, nobody near him, corner 3, but it did not go in. And then that's when they rebounded and had to ultimately went up by 3. So I thought it was over. The Lakers had to foul. And once they fouled, the young man had to go to the line and hit 2 free throws. I'm thinking, man, it's over. It's over. And of course, he missed both free throws. And once he missed both free throws, we all know what happened next. Austin Reeves made the perfect pass on a perfectly drawn up play. AD made the good screen. Matt Ryan looked down at his feet to make sure he was in bounds and behind the 3-point line at the same time to have ultimate concentration. And even when he released it, I was thinking, damn, the shot looks good. And it got all net. And I tell you what, the Lakers defense in overtime was, man, stupendous. I mean, the 6 points that New Orleans got in overtime, 2 of them shouldn't have counted because Zion was clearly out of bounds when he made a pass to CJ McCullough because of the great seal defense that Anthony Davis sealed him out on the baseline. He went out of bounds. He was a whole foot out of bounds and threw it, so I don't know how the referees missed that. So technically, they really only got 4 points. And then the last 2 points was really when the game was already sealed and CJ McCullough ultimately got a little mid-range shot that didn't matter. But the only other points they got before that was a hell of a shot that Zion Williams made against Anthony Davis because Anthony Davis really was playing superb defense, even though he had a couple of shots get by him in the waning moments of the fourth quarter that I feel like he normally would have stopped, but I think it kind of surprised him. You know, they made a good move. Zion made a good move on the inside, but at the end of the day, you know, what I liked most about this was the Los Angeles Lakers didn't depend heavily on LeBron James, and if they can do that, then they're going to be successful because you had 6 players in double figures. You had Troy Brown, who had 15. You had LeBron James, who had 20. You had Anthony Davis, who had 20. You had Lonnie Walker, who had 28. And you had Matt Ryan, who had 11. So you're talking about not just 5 players, but 6 players in double figures. I mean, that is damn good for any team to have 6 players. To me, it's better to have a team that can get 5 and 6 players in double digits than to depend on 2 players because that's not been a recipe for success as of late. You can see that in Brooklyn. You can see that what's been going on in LA. And I mean, like I said, the whole